What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another dope edition of Define Your Legacy. I'm your host, Theus Elijah McBee. All right, before we tap into today's episode, just want to shout out the online store of Define Your Legacy, which can be found at the link in the description of this episode. All right, we have long sleeves, tees, hoodies, and a whole lot more. All right, so feel free to check out the link in the description of this episode. But just like that, we're going to jump right in. We have Tiffany on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I appreciate you for asking. I appreciate you for coming on the show. But if you could, all right, if you could just introduce yourself, tell the world what it is that you do and the value that you provide.
All right. I am Tiffany King. I am a wife and a mom of three little ones. I just had my third back in May, and I help coach aspiring virtual assistants right now over on VA Like a Mother. And what I do is help moms who desire to stay at home with their kids be able to find a way to do that through virtual assisting.
Hmm. Okay, okay. And first thing first, of course, definitely want to say congratulations on the newborn.
Thank
It's
you.
funny, when we were first, you're welcome. It's funny when we were first talking, you were saying that you were on a maternity leave, for a couple of months. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't want to get you at a bad time, but I'm definitely thankful that you came on the show. But if you could, right, just explain to people how you got started in the virtual assistant space.
Yeah, so back in 2018, when I had my first, he had just turned a year old. And in all transparency, we weren't doing too well financially. So my husband was like, "Hey, babe, you're gonna have to go back to work. I know you love being at home with your son, with our son, but you're gonna have to go back." And I applied for some jobs, but I was like, I really don't want to have to put my son in childcare. So somehow I found out about virtual assisting, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give myself 30 days to land a client. And if I don't, then I'll go ahead and I'll go back into the job force. And I'm going to give myself 15 days to launch this business. So that way I have another 15 days to find a client. So I launched that business August 15th, 2018, after July, I think it was July 31st when I made the decision to go ahead and start. And 8 days later, I got my first client, and I've been virtual assisting ever since.
Mm. Okay, so one thing I took note of too is like you gave yourself a deadline, right? You said 30 days slash a month, and then you chopped it in half to 15, right? And then obviously there was two of them. So what made you decide to be that urgent with your deadline?
I think it was because if I knew my type of personality, I get in my head a lot and I like things to be perfect. And I knew if I waited, then I was never going to start, and the time and the money was winding down. So I was like, look, Tiff, it's either you make it happen or you go back to work.
Mm, mm. So the pressure you feel like was definitely there. But what made you like how'd you find virtual assistant as opposed to anything else like Airbnb or Turo or whatever? Like what was it about the virtual assistant part that either you kind of learned about? Like did anyone introduce you to it or what?
I think I was Googling one day, like how to work from home, probably Pinteresting, since I'm always on Pinterest. And I saw that people were doing it. I didn't see at the time a lot of people were doing it, but I had a background in admin and marketing and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I can do that. All I gotta do is just find the person, give me the person, and I can do it.
Hmm. So how did you? So that's nothing too, right? And again, you said 30 days, which in essence, to be honest with you, isn't that long, which is
Mhm.
actually a good thing. So how did you find? How did you build trust, if you will? Like how was it reaching out to potential clients?
So I will be honest, my first client was an old college friend. I put some hype around me, maybe launching something, something's going on social media. Then the day I launched, I mean, I was like, "Yay, I launched. Look at me, look at my business. If you know anybody, please send them my way." And that friend or classmate reached out and was like, "Hey, I might have something for you. Let's talk." And so I made sure that I had my stuff in order so that way when I showed up, I didn't look super amateur. And yeah, she was my very first client.
Hmm. And it's cool too that you said that, one, because it was someone that you knew, but also two, you utilize social media, right, to
Mhm.
kind of get the word out.
Yeah, definitely. Mostly Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, okay, okay. Now I gotta ask, and what exactly does a virtual assistant do?
So thankfully nowadays, virtual assistant is so broad.
Hmm.
But mainly most people think of people who provide like admin work remotely. So you're thinking of someone who might answer check your emails, who might put up some social media for you, do light admin work for you, and you can do it from the comfort of your home, anywhere in the world, really. And it's just basically being an assistant, an administrative assistant to a business owner.
Okay, okay. And do you feel like there's like a lot of systems that need to be in place in order to become a virtual assistant? Because obviously, if you're doing these types of admin work, you're probably someone who needs to be organized, right?
Yeah, for the most part, you do. But one thing I will say that I love about this industry is it's so gracious, so you can learn as you go. But you do have to have like some sort of organization in the background. The people who do well are the ones who probably came from the admin world. Um, but now I will say, like I said, since it's so broad now, a lot of people come in just doing social media or they might do graphic design. So right now, virtual assisting is starting to look very it's not so niche down anymore. It's starting to be very inclusive. So anybody who has any type of background, as long as you can find a business owner to support, you can call yourself a virtual assistant.
Okay, okay. And do you recommend, I guess on the flip side, do you recommend, I mean, your answer may be a little biased here, but do you recommend that business owners have some sort of virtual assistant? I guess explain the benefits of having one.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of having a virtual assistant is that when you're a business owner, you got so many moving parts going on. And so some things might fall through the cracks, or you might be finding yourself burnt out. So one of the things is that you get to delegate, honestly, as a business owner, the things you don't really like to do, you're not really that great at doing, the things you don't want to do. So then that way you can focus as a business owner on the things that bring you money, that bring you joy, and the reason why you started your business in the first place.
Because, I feel like maybe as an entrepreneur, a lot of people, they start to realize that time really is their biggest, asset. Sometimes you wear a lot of different hats and things like that, but at the same time, we always say you can only go where your feet are, right? So do
Exactly.
you feel like being a virtual assistant, you've definitely been able to provide like some much needed support to business owners?
Oh yeah, for sure. I give them their time back. That's like the number one thing that they say. They're like, "Thank you. You're an extra hands or feet or, whatever. You helped me to trim my time down tremendously."
Mm-hmm. And what does that mean to you as well, though, right? You're in a business where serving and improving the lives of others really is key, right? So what does that kind of mean to you?
I've always by nature been someone who loves to support people. So just to hear that I can help someone get their time back or be able to spend time with their family, I'm really big on family. That means a lot to me. And it also helps me in my business because seeing other business owners value their time so much helps me to, in my own business, value my own time and put those boundaries in place.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned a good word, boundaries. So how do you balance just the idea, not just work and life, but the idea of being a virtual assistant, right, as well as being a parent? Because it's one thing to be an assistant to a business owner, but I'm sure it's a lot different than being a parent to a human being. So how do you feel like you balance those two spaces?
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, for one thing, I have to be upfront and communicate well with my clients. So all of my clients know, look, I got kids, they're at home, and so I have certain hours in place. Um, I, don't take phone calls after a certain time. Also, I've kind of like quote unquote trained my kids. My oldest just turned 5. That mommy works during this time. If you see mommy on a meeting, we don't talk. So there's a lot of communication and systems and routine and rhythms that have to happen up front. So that way everyone is on the same page.
Mm. Do you feel like it's extremely like convenient to be able to work from home and something like this and truly being a virtual assistant?
Really, really do. I love that, especially in the beginning when I just had one child. I could be, it's different with 3.
Yeah, yeah, right.
In the beginning, I can get off a meeting with the client and then like right after go and take my son to the library for story time. Like it was very much I could live my life on my own terms. Sure, I was supporting somebody else, but the money that they were paying me was also supporting me to be able to live the life that I wanted to create for my family.
Hmm. And also too, is it possible really? I know it is, but talk to me too about having potentially more than one client at a time. Is that something that you feel like you may have dealt with?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think I've had up to, I think 5 or 6 clients at a time. Wouldn't recommend that. with littles. But definitely, again, it goes back to that communication, back to that organization and having rhythms and routine in place, knowing how much I could stretch myself, what I can do within a day, was really helpful.
Okay, okay. And are there like any, I guess, specific apps or system in place that you have used that you feel like have deemed to be pretty useful?
Yeah, so when I first started off, I was an hourly virtual assistant. Now I charge by project. But one thing that was really good was it was called Toggle. That helped me to track my time and also helped to the clients to see what they were spending their money on as far as time. And because I can put in the project that I was working on, push start, work on it, stop when I stopped. Another good app was Calendly, and that's where people can schedule to, have time with you, talk with you. It's like a virtual calendar. And then of course, you know, the Google Suite and like Canva if you're going to do things like graphic design, even for your own business and stuff like that. And then of course the big things, ClickUp, Asana, Airtable, Trello. There's so many. You can go down the rabbit hole with all these apps
Yeah.
and stuff.
And the good thing about that too is like we always got to remember that, you know, your phone can really be a powerful tool if you allow it to be, right?
Hmm.
There's so much information at your fingertips, but it's just our job to really utilize it to the best of our ability.
Right.
Um, so how do you feel like you did, you kind of discovered some of these apps, right? Obviously you mentioned they're useful to you, but like, was there ever a point where like you just Googled them or someone put you on game or like you just tried it and, just worked out?
Well, one good thing about the virtual assistant world, it is so big, but it is so supportive. And I'm in quite a few groups and network with a lot of people. And so you kind of start to see the same apps pop up. And so I will Google them, or I might even ask, hey, I need help tracking my time and tracking my projects. Does anybody have anything that they recommend? Um, so yeah, I get a lot of people will share other stuff. You just have to be careful not to get like that shiny object syndrome and be downloading like all the apps for all the things. So yeah.
Hmm. Why you say that?
Just because, for instance, ClickUp versus Asana versus the next thing, whatever comes out, you will be jumping all over the place. And sometimes it's best just to be a master of one instead of always jumping on like the new trend. It's better to like master that one thing down, and have that for your clients instead of, switching around.
Yeah, yeah, okay, okay, okay. And also too, there's like a level of, I feel like consistency. If
Mhm.
you're a master of one thing, that means you know more about it, obviously, and you kind of work from there.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the idea of the virtual assistant space and everyone is kind of close knit in a way. Um, is there or have you noticed I won't say average age, but like are there younger like I guess what is there a age requirement? Like do you have to be a certain age or do you feel like any and everyone can really become a virtual assistant? Obviously if they put in, necessary work and things of that nature.
Yeah, any and everyone, honestly. One of the groups I'm in is like 100,000 people, and I see men, women. I see women like older people. I see people that's like 18 and they're like, look, I got to pay for college. So,
Mm,
I'm going to be a virtual assistant. I see moms, dads, singles, married, all across the board.
mm. And do you think do you need a degree to become a virtual assistant?
Oh, no, not at all. That's one thing I love about it. Not at all.
Mm. So that's convenient. You obviously save on, student loans, and that's something that, of course,
Right.
a lot of people are, dealing with, is, of course, with the recent news.
Right.
So how did you learn though, right? How did eventually you kind of learn as well as kind of brush up on your skills?
So I love Google University. So I Googled a lot, and then when I got to a point in my business where I could, I started to invest in a couple of coaches just to help me brush up more on my service skills, and to market myself better and to price myself better.
Mm. I was gonna say you mentioned Google University, but YouTube as well.
Yes.
There were a lot of it's funny too. I think like when you kind of I won't say make it to the top, but when you reach a certain level, it's like you really appreciate the apps like Google and YouTube and things like that. So but I know you mentioned you've been doing this now since what August 15th, 2018,
Hmm.
right? And so just the idea. Oh yeah, I listen. But yeah, just the idea of like transitioning right from being a virtual assistant right, to now coaching and leading the way for other virtual assistants in the game. So, how's that process been for you?
It still blows my mind, honestly. Again, like I told you, I am pretty much an open book. So I just shared my journey online as it was happening because I was just so excited. And then I shared a YouTube video randomly, it was just like, hey, this is how you become a virtual assistant. Left it alone. I think I recorded that in 2019. 2020 happened. And then all of a sudden that video got so many views. I had people DM me, email me, message me, hey, how can I do this too? And so I was like, why not tell other people
Mm,
that, that this is possible. I think a lot of people just don't know that it's possible.
mm. Now I gotta ask, when people first asked you for more information, what was your immediate response versus what was your response, let's say 6 months later? Was there a
Um,
difference?
there's definitely a difference. For I will say at first it was just like why are you asking me? Like who am I?
Mm,
And I would point them to other people. Now it's more so like, okay, you guys actually trust me. I have helped a few people become virtual assistants, so now I have a bit more confidence in showing women that they can do it. If I can do it in 15 days, you can do it in 15 days.
mm,
So definitely a big difference in confidence for me.
mm. And you meant okay, yeah. Let's touch on that even more, right? You mentioned the 15 days, and before, this idea of you were giving yourself a 30-day window, and that's a very small time frame. I'll repeat that again, but that's a very very small time, which is a good thing, right? Because I always say too, like we always talk about generational wealth from like a long-term standpoint, which is good, years and decades and all that. But at the same time, some people need to be quote unquote saved now, right?
Mhm.
Some people, need to pay their rent by this month. So I think it's important for us to really kind of zoom in, if you will. A lot of people say zoom out, but also zoom in and like, okay, what are some ways that you can really change your life today? What are some ways that you can change your life within a 24-hour span? So how do you feel like you were able to do that? Obviously not the 24-hour, but just a month and 15 days. What are some things that you may feel like you should tell others that are looking to really kind of change things quickly, I'll say.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that. It's super cliche, but like, once if what is it? Sometimes you get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm,
I was at the end. It was like we have no more. Like Tiffany, you're gonna have to go back to work. And just me thinking, oh my gosh, I gotta put my son in childcare. Nothing wrong with childcare, but I didn't want to at the time. Like it really gave me that drive. And so I had to shut off the perfectionist Tiffany, the one that wanted to have the nice website. I'm gonna be super transparent. I couldn't even afford a website. I had a Spark Adobe page, and all I did was mask that little, www.adobe.123758, like just, and sent that out there and was like, this is all I got. And so, not saying you have to put out sloppy work, but literally just do your best and show up as much as best as you can. Um, and then yeah, if you got that drive in you and you got that kind of like desperation, you will figure out a way to make it work.
yeah, and that's real. That's very real. It's like failure can kind of be inspirational. It's like when you're that close to the edge and like the only option you have is to keep going, or the only option you have is to be successful. That in itself should motivate you to want to keep going. But even kind of in saying that, the idea of again, I know I keep mentioning the whole month thing and things like that, but I think the good thing to know about your story is that you gave yourself a deadline. You did, right? A lot of books and or whatever will try and give it to people that read it, that type of time frame. But what did it mean to you to know that you yourself gave yourself that type of time frame? And obviously your situation was a little unique because you feel like you had to, but even still.
Yeah, I first of all, it showed me that I can do way more than I think I'm capable of, but it also helps me um to let other people know that hey, you can do this. Like no excuses, really, honestly. Like um it's life changing. And it just showed me other things. Like I could do other things. I could do hard things. I can do things quickly, and it opened my eyes to realize I can create money for myself,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Mm. No, it does.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the financial literacy so that definitely makes sense. So, but how did that feel too, right? Because I mean, you mentioned the idea of like you were working before, but then I guess realizing that you can make money for yourself as well.
That was empowering, honestly. At first, it was a little scary. But then the more clients I got, I was like, wow, there is no cap. There's no ceiling to this versus, when I had a job before, it was based off of, like my degree and, my performance at work. And this time it's like I can work as much or as little as I need to. And I can charge, not really charge as much as I want to, but you know what I'm saying? Like there's no cap there. I don't have to stop at like 40K a year, 50K a year. As long as I put in the work and work as hard as I want to, there's no ceiling.
Right. There's no, so yeah, when you're in, in that type of field, just anything like that, when you're selling something, when you're providing a service, there's no real sin. But now I have to ask, talk to me too about the opposite, right? I won't say the bad days, but it's the idea of like, even though there's no ceiling, there's also no floor, right? And anything, this is a question that's beyond virtual assistant, right? This is just anything, anytime you're a full-time athletic entrepreneur, this is also an area where like, it's like, if you don't work, you don't eat, literally.
Right.
You can't, so what does it mean to you to like it's almost like you can't really be completely lazy. You got to work and get up and work it out every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like you said, you can't be lazy when you know that you are the one who's paying you, so to speak. I mean, yeah, your clients, but it's you. Then that makes you want to get up and hustle. Because think about it, the pandemic. I started this business in 2018.
Yep.
2020 hit. That was very real for a lot of business owners, a lot of virtual assistants. A lot of people were like, "Hey, I don't want to spend this money, or I can't spend this money, so I need to put you on pause." Thankfully I was blessed to where it didn't really affect me too much. But I mean, it was very scary for a while.
Yeah. I feel like though, like with the pandemic, a virtual assistant, the timing wise, that may have been, again, I have no idea. I'm not in the space, but like just considering like certain options, and if everyone is working from home, more people may need assistance and things like that. I don't know. It's just the idea of like, I feel like identifying your situation and then moving accordingly, or actually identifying the world's situation and then moving accordingly, right? So even in stating that, what would you say are some type of ideal clients that maybe either you have worked with, or you may have heard that other people have worked with, some spaces that they are in that may need virtual assistants?
For sure. Definitely the solopreneurs that are burnt out, the ones that like if you're staying up to like 5, 6 in the morning, like consistently all the time, you're not getting any sleep. You might want to hire a virtual assistant. It's really one thing, like I said, I love about this world is all across the board, anyone needs a virtual assistant. There is no field or business that doesn't need one. If you need someone to handle your back end, so that way you can have more time, that way you can make more money, then you definitely need.
Yeah. And I mean, like, we all need help, right? I know everyone wants to be in a solopreneur and stuff, but like eventually, everyone needs some sort of rest, right? Like,
Yeah.
again, you can only go where your feet are. You can't work 24/7. That's a tough thing for people to accept.
Yeah.
But and that's where, virtual assistants kind of come into play. So is it more of like you reaching out to them, or them reaching out to you? Is it a mixture of both? I guess what type of, marketing is required, kind of thing? Or honestly, is it testimonials? Is it referrals? Is it all the above?
It's all of the above. I mean, in the beginning, you do got to work hard. You probably have to reach out to people. But what will help you with that too is if you do have an online presence, you don't necessarily have to have a website. I had one because I think it's just nice, just so it makes you look more professional. But if you can somehow show your expertise somewhere, and for me, that was social media. So I documented my journey. I showed my client wins after I had my first client. um, that will help you to stand out. But then also too, you can't get lazy. You still need to reach out to people. But then I also tell people something that's very important. You got that client, don't get lazy. Give them such an amazing experience that you will have referrals. I'll be honest, my first, I think 4 or 5 clients were straight referrals. Like I didn't even have to work for them. It was like I got that first client and they just kept sending me other people.
Hmm. Yeah, that's usually how it goes. It's like the people that will end up like paying you and stuff. It won't always come from like a cold marketing kind of thing. It won't always just come from like you emailing them, or calling, whatever. Doing a good job, to your point, can be a good thing. So talk to me too about the power of over delivering, right? It's not just about getting a deal or a client, but when you've dealt with them, obviously have done a good job because they referred you. So what does that mean too, to kind of like either over deliver or actually try your best to do a great job when an opportunity has been presented to you.
Yeah, it's definitely a great incentive. It keeps you, like you said, being referred. It gets you a great reputation, and it's something about having that great reputation you want to keep. And then you start to um, realize just how far great customer service goes. So then you start recognizing when you get great customer service, and stuff like that.
Hmm. Do you need a team to be a virtual assistant? Can
No.
you just, no?
I mean, you can have one. It makes it easier. I'm not there yet, but yeah.
I was gonna say, I guess my question is, do virtual assistants need virtual assistants?
Yeah, one of my clients I was a subcontractor for. She had a lot, and actually she was going on maternity leave, and so I worked with her for a few months, and then yeah, I worked for somebody else who was like, "Look, I just got way too many clients, so can you
Mm.
help me out?"
Mm. And though, talk to me about that as well. Just accepting the fact of having too many clients, right?
Yeah,
Because obviously, money is money, right? We all adults, but at the same time, maybe if you take on too much of your plate, is that a real thing? Can you actually take on too much, on your plate and have too many clients?
yeah, I actually did that right after I had my second son. I jumped back out of maternity leave like this, and I went full force. And before I knew it, I was burnt out. I had too many clients. And I noticed that my quality was starting to slip a little bit, and I was starting
Mm.
to, even resent the clients that I was blessed to have just because I
Mm.
had so much on my plate. And that was an eye opener for me too, because I think I started getting a little greedy. Like, again, when you don't have that ceiling, you also don't realize that sometimes you need to just take a pause and just enjoy where you're at right now instead of keep chasing the dollar. And so yeah, it was very eye opening.
Wow, that's a okay. So all right, so put it like this: the lesson has been learned, though, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to ask that because now with the timing of it, again being dealing with maternity leave again. Cool. Okay, we got that. So I guess too, even going off that, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned from being a virtual assistant?
Hmm. Biggest lesson. That is a really good question. I would say the biggest lesson is how much in control I have of time, but yet also at the same time, how much I don't have control of time. Like I only have 24 hours a day, and I can do whatever I could in that 24 hours a day. But at the end of the day, I still only got 24 hours. And so I need to recognize that I am limited to that 24 hours and make sure that I use it intentionally to serve both my clients, actually my clients, my family, and myself.
Hmm. You mentioned 24 hours, so I got to ask, how important is time to you?
Um, After being in this world, very much, very much. I was given at one point I was given my clients their time back, but it was taken away from mine. So I had to learn how to balance the two, especially as a mom with three young kids.
Hmm. Hmm. But I mean, also too, it's like, because it's virtual and you may be able to work from home. People may think it's easy 24/7, but it's still a job,
Yeah,
right? Even to anyone that's like a full-time entrepreneur, it's like I feel like you're always gonna work in this life. You
yeah,
are, right? Like now, it's a difference between working for someone else versus working for yourself. But you're like it's very tough to avoid working and what I'm saying, but at the same time surviving. So do you ever feel like you had to balance the two? And like I've talked to a lot of people that obviously that came on the show, like they say they'll have hours, right? Whether it's 9 to 5, 10 to 6, whatever. Do you feel like you bent that your personal hours? Like if you wake up and say, all right, I'm working for 6 hours today, do you end up working 7.5?
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah,
How have you dealt with that though? Do you go back to the drawing board and say, okay, I got to be more firm with that?
yeah, for sure. It goes back to that boundaries, and even at some point, I had to increase my pricing too because yeah,
I was just getting ready to ask that off the follow up. So it's like if you decide to work less hours, right? It's for burnout, whatever. I mean, still your life, right? If you decide to work less hours, does that mean, at least for you, you can, bump up the the request on the back end?
I can get crazy. Like people
Right,
might
right.
say
Well,
I'm crazy.
that's why I said there's a difference between like, I say, all right, we're gonna work for 20 minutes and we're gonna try something crazy, but whether it's
Yeah,
a gradual thing or it's like, okay,
yeah,
here's what we can cut out.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And has that been something that maybe not necessarily you deal with often, but it's the idea of like because it's all a numbers game, right?
Mm.
At the end of the day, it's all about, numbers and things like that. So do you feel like that's something that you've had to deal with before, right? Just like at what point do you kind of make that change?
Yeah, and actually, I just had to do that. I came back from
Oh.
maternity leave and realized, hey, Tiff, you haven't raised your price in 2 years. Like,
Hmm.
wow, okay, it's time.
Yeah, so oh, man, and you bring up a good point that the idea of raising prices is like with the way inflation is, you really don't have a choice but to raise it. It sucks because people may look at you as being a bad person. Don't blame me, right? Blame the world for, you know, being in a society where they are printing money left and right. So it's like if everything else costs money, then it's not a bad thing for you to feel like you have to increase the same way the world has. You know what I'm saying? And that you're still in business. Number one goal of business is to, make money. Obviously, you want to serve and help people, but there's no dodging that element to it. So let's take it from the top, right? Let's say someone came to you and said they are interested in starting, all right, a virtual assistant business. All right. What would be the first thing you tell them? Let's walk through that process. If I came to you and said, okay, I am interested in becoming a virtual assistant, and it is just me. I don't have that much experience. What would you recommend? What would be the first thing they do?
First thing I would do is make sure that they understand what a virtual assistant is, so that way they're not, thinking one thing and it's something else. And then I would ask them to identify their skill sets or experience that they have in whatever field they come from. Because once we can figure out their skill sets and what experience they do have, we can then tailor their business to that skill set and um, that industry or whatever experience they have.
Mhm. Okay, so let's say a person like wrote down all of like what they're good at, right? Like really very informal. Let's say they wrote it down in their notes app on their phone,
Yeah.
right? They wrote it down. What would you say should be after that? Should they look more towards like, okay, like watch YouTube videos or podcasts, or should it be like what other people should be talked to specifically, whether it's client wise, or should they focus on what they got going on internally, or what else after that?
I think what they should do, focus definitely always you're gonna have to work on things internally, because you're gonna have that fear, that imposter syndrome that is this gonna work for me? Am I gonna make money? Should I quit my job first? Don't do that. Keep your job. Things like that. But then from there, I would have them list out the services that they want to provide.
Mm,
Because there's no sense in trying to find clients and then being like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like you want to have those boundaries.
mm. What what are some of the main? I mean, you touched on it a little bit before, but what were some of the main, I guess, popular and more common tasks slash responsibilities that someone may be asked? Now, again, maybe it's different, right, depending on the client and things like that. But is there anything that you feel like may be standard for someone that's just trying to get their feet wet?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people in the beginning, if they want to hire a general virtual assistant, they're going to most likely ask that you handle their email inbox. They might ask, sometimes they might have you get on the phone to do like light customer service. I've never had to do that. I was up front and always been like, hey, I got a kid. You're going to hear them screaming. So I'm not doing that. They might have you lately. I've seen a lot of people saying, can you post for me on social media? Like, I'll provide the graphics. Can you just put it on there for me? A lot of people might have you respond to customers in the Facebook group or stuff like that. So, like anything that you would do in an office, um, maybe send out invoices, maybe go in and help with their systems if you're good with that. Something more so like, can you just take this off my task list? It literally can be anything. But the most basics of the basics is usually anything you would see somebody do, like a receptionist or an admin assistant in like a business. Those are the skill sets that really can get you in the door.
Okay. And I have to ask this, don't say a number, but how would one determine what they should price their services for? Is it should would you recommend they wait until the client reaches back to them, or do you think that up front it should be stated like, okay, like should it be a package that they're offering, if you will, right? Here's my services. Here's what I can do. You let me know, or should it be vice versa when you're, I guess, negotiating or waiting on a certain client to get you back? Should you wait on what they say?
So it can go both ways. I recommend you having your packaging,
Mm,
so that way you know how much you're going to settle for and not settle for, and that way too you don't have to worry about the haggling of pricing. Because I think one thing in this world is, virtual assistant world is we have a habit of charging too low, so
mm,
we'll go with the lowest number. And I think, people, it's convenient for business owners sometimes. I'm not saying that they do it on purpose, but you're thinking about your business. So I would start off with whether it's hourly or per project or however you want to do it, definitely have a set number.
okay. And how does I guess one stay organized with all this, right? I'm assuming I'm assuming too at some point they're probably going to either create an Instagram account, right, and kind of post the fact that they're doing it or whatever the case may be. But how does one reach out, whether it be through email, maybe cold calling or whatever the case may be? Is there some sort of structure that should happen?
Yeah, so if like let's say you're not having anybody reach out to you, I have honestly, if especially that's one good thing about being on social media, especially in certain Facebook groups, is people will say, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to help me with this." They might not necessarily say, "I'm looking for a virtual assistant," but they might be like the client I reached out to in the very beginning. She was like, "I need somebody to transcribe all of these audio files I have." And so I like slid in there, found her email address, and was like, "Hey, I seen that you need help with this,"
Mm,
and went on from there.
mm. It's funny that you say that too, because it's like you like if anytime I feel like you see someone stating that they have a problem, the next step is, like, in order to get paid, is being able to provide a solution. And so, do you feel like, in the role that you're in and the role that you have other people with, it's that simple to its core? Not necessarily saying the job is simple, but just the headline, right? Identify a problem, provide a solution.
Yeah, pretty much,
Mm,
pretty much straightforward, just like that.
mm. And you mentioned too the social media component. Do you think that's something that a lot of younger, I guess, or people that are heavily involved in like the social media space could also be involved in?
Oh yeah, for sure. So you can leverage social media so well in this industry, especially using it as a way to show your expertise. You might not be someone who's aspiring to be a social media manager, but you can still show. I have people who are just regular general admin assistants, and they'll put, content out there like, what can a virtual assistant do for you? Or they'll share, this is what I did with my client, and she was so happy. Look at what she said, or things like that, or how to better organize your time, how to better organize your back end. So you can use social media as kind of like your portfolio too if you don't have a portfolio.
Mm. Yeah, and that was going to be a good point too that I want to bring up as well. How important has social media impacted your business?
Oh,
All
so
aspects.
important.
When you first started becoming a virtual assistant to now coaching to now, probably doing both, all that.
Oh yeah, it has been helpful. I don't think I would be where I am or have gotten my clients so quickly without social media.
Mm, mm. And even, you touched on too the idea of if it's I think an hourly assignment or like a general uh project,
Hmm.
right? So establishing the difference between the two, how is that? Is that something that you kind of confirm with the client first and foremost, or what's kind of the process that goes into something like that?
Yeah, so it depends. If they reach out to you, you kind of let them know like, hey, I have an hourly rate or a project rate. Now, if you're like applying to a job, they'll probably have it specified on there like, hey, I want to pay this amount an hour, or I'm looking just to have pay this flat fee. I started off as hourly and then realized I was working way too fast.
Mm,
So then I did it per project.
mm. You say you're working way too fast, not necessarily too hard. So what do you mean
Yeah.
by that?
So, for instance, some tasks in the beginning took me a long time. I had to learn the ropes. I had to learn how that client does things. So, like, let's say if it took me 2 hours to get through her email list, eventually I knew how she wanted things done. I can knock that out in like maybe hour, hour and a half. And so now I'm putting on there that I only worked an hour and a half versus before I was working 2 hours and getting paid for 2 hours. Now I'm getting paid for an hour and a half.
Mm,
So I ended up like if she paid me 10 hours a month, I'm getting through stuff quicker. She's like, oh, we still got 3 hours. She's giving me more work because
right.
she paid for 10 hours. And so eventually I learned, okay, let me just do a package. I'll do all of this for this amount of money.
Mm. Okay, and even in saying that too, obviously, ending on the money tip, how exactly is that, I guess, transferred, or how is it paid throughout? Is it really just a simple, all right, you send them an invoice, bada boom, bada bing, or is there something else that's, I guess, kind of out of the ordinary?
No, so I just basically, like, for instance, I, handle my client's social media. I say, hey, we're doing X amount of posts, X amount of captions, hashtag stories, all the whole shebang. You get all of this for this amount of money.
Hmm. Okay, so it's already lined up.
Hmm.
Okay, and it's cool to hear you mention that too. I mean, obviously, we talk about social media, and now I'm sure that's something that your potential, I guess, students, not even just your clients, but students will appreciate. So, when your students watch this video, or what's something you think, or what's something that you want them to know? What's something that you'd want them to kind of be more aware of?
As far as like for the pricing or just in
Or,
general.
or just in general, anything that you think would help them in the VA space.
Yeah, just know that it gets sometimes you see people charging for less. There's a big thing where people are going overseas for virtual assistant help because it's substantially cheap. Just know that you don't have to lower your rates that low, and that people get what they pay for. And just because they might come at you and say, well, I can get this for that much over there, then they're not your client. You don't want somebody who you got to convince you're worth to, because then they're going to be a pain in the butt
Yeah.
the whole time.
Yeah. Because eventually, too, if you keep dropping the number lower and lower, now again, you're just going to burn yourself out, and then ultimately, will it even be worth it?
Exactly.
Money wise as well as stress.
Yeah.
But I asked that question, about the people that you've helped kind of break into the space as well, because it leads me to the final question, right? You mentioned the idea of you getting into virtual assistant August 25th, 2018. You're fresh off maternity leave. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
All that, just the amount of time it took you. We're a little over 4 years now.
Hmm.
But also, you made the transition too, not just to have a virtual assistant business, but to now also help people along the way. And I think that's the ultimate definition of defining your legacy, right? And I say all that, right? I word it all up into that is because it leads me to the final question I have for you. And that question that I have is a question I ask everyone that's been on Defining Legacy. And that question is, how do you want to be remembered?
Ooh, very good question. I want to be remembered as someone who stewarded her time, her resources well, to where anybody who's come in contact with me, but especially my husband and my children, say that they were blessed to have me in their life and to be in contact with me. I want to leave everybody um, a little better or a little happier, um, or a little bit more encouraged than before they've ever talked to me or met me. So,
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's because the thing is, obviously with this being a financial literacy podcast, but also that question is meant to be a reminder, that everyone has an expiration date, and even with our pursuits of financial literacy and improving our lives from a money perspective, just kind of taking a step back and actually realizing where we're at, where we want to be, and more importantly, I guess, where we've been. Um, so if you could, right, just drop your social media, right? Like, where can people find you? Drop your website as well. Any type of information that you want people to know, and contact info and things like that.
yeah, so you can find me at VA Like a Mother for tips on how to become a virtual assistant so that way you can stay at home with your littles. You can find me on YouTube at Tiffany King. And right now, you can go to the website, but it's under construction since I just came back from maternity leave. But it's www.tiffanyp, as in Paul, that's not my middle name, tiffanypking.com.
Okay. And on the Defiant Legacy front, y'all, make sure you subscribe to Theist Elijah on YouTube. All right, follow Define Your Legacy on Instagram as well as Facebook. Follow DYL Podcast on Twitter, Theist Elijah on TikTok. All right, and last but not least, just as a reminder, all episodes of Define Your Legacy drop every Thursday morning at 8:24 a.m. Eastern. All right. Every episode of Define Legacy drop every Thursday at 8:24 a.m. Eastern. All right. And before we let you go, Tiffany, we need you to do at least one more favor if you could. All right. Close us out if you could. Leave us with some words of wisdom. Do you have any final things that you want to say? And it can be related to the VA space, or just life, or anything like that. A lesson you've learned, But what were some final words that you would want to leave our Define Legacy audience with?
Oh gosh. I guess I would say it goes back to what you just said at the end. We all have expiration dates, so make sure that you steward your time well. And you can do that by best serving yourself, your family, and others. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's more, and how you spend your time, speaks volumes on what it is that you really want to accomplish. Like vacations obviously are cool, they're important. Off time, you need some time to yourself. But for the most part, when you think about it, the 24-hour day, it's like you want to be as structured and as detailed as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, appreciate you again for being on the show, Tiffany. It was definitely much
Thank you so
appreciated.
much.
It was a great episode. And just like that, y'all. All right, another dope episode of Define Legacy in the books. Just like that, y'all. We gone. Peace.